The date is the 23rd of February, 2026, and in the high-stakes, glittering world of global diplomatic influence, silence is often louder than any scream. For years, Meghan, Duchess of Sussex, has navigated the international stage with the unshakable belief that her name alone was a passport to the most exclusive corridors of power. She believed that the title of Duchess, combined with the glitter of the American entertainment industry and the aura of royal rebellion, would open doors that are usually reserved for heads of state and captains of industry. But earlier this month, that belief collided violently with the cold, hard reality of geopolitical protocol. Once celebrated as a global playground for elites, a sanctuary of luxury and influence, the Emirate of Dubai has delivered a stunning rebuke that no one in the Archewell Foundation leadership saw coming. When the doors of the United Arab Emirates, UAE, quietly closed and invitations mysteriously vanished into the desert air, one name echoed through the palace-like halls of power, not as a guest of honor, but as a persona non grata, Meghan Markle. Insiders close to the situation claim the snub was deliberate, strategic, and deeply personal. It was not a clerical error or a scheduling conflict. It was a message sent from one ruling family to another, a signal that the gray zone in which Prince Harry and Meghan have operated for the last 6 years has finally been erased. What triggered such a dramatic shift? Why did a simple trip provoke an alleged outburst behind the scenes that left aides trembling? As rumors swirl and tempers flare from Montecito, California to the Persian Gulf region, one question dominates the conversation. What did Meghan do to make Dubai say no? The fallout has shocked observers worldwide, and tonight we are peeling back the layers of the most humiliating moment in the Sussexes' post-royal career. The Dubai diplomatic incident, as it is now being called in diplomatic circles, was supposed to be smooth, seamless, and almost invisible. It was designed to be a quiet arrival that would pass without headlines or hurried whispers, a stealth mission to secure venture capital funding and prestige for a brand that is rapidly running out of both. According to several high-level commentators, Meghan Markle touched down at Dubai International Airport, DXB, in early February 2026, expecting exactly that kind of treatment. She anticipated the calm, efficient handling often given to well-known figures whose presence fits comfortably within a country's carefully managed image and interests. She expected the commercially important person, CIP terminal, the discreet security detail, and the nod of recognition that says, "You belong here." What she encountered instead was something far colder and far more terrifying for a public figure: absolute bureaucratic silence. Dubai is not known for public scenes or loud refusals. The city has built a global reputation on controlled elegance, where decisions are made discreetly in air-conditioned boardrooms and messages are delivered without noise. In this case, there was no spectacle at the airport. There were no raised voices from the General Directorate of Residency and Foreigners Affairs, GDRFA. No security standoff with guards. There was just a routine pause, a quiet escort to a secondary customs screening room, and a short, terrifyingly dull internal review that ended with a polite but firm decision. Inadmissibility directive. Within hours, the moment was over. No photographs surfaced on the TMZ Celebrity News Network. No official announcement was released by the UAE Ministry of Foreign Affairs. No spokesperson stepped forward to explain why the Duchess was turned away. Meghan was reportedly placed on a return flight, leaving the city almost as quietly as she had arrived, her luggage likely never even leaving the hold. For Dubai, that was the end of the matter. A geopolitical risk assessment had been made, a decision had been executed, and the city moved on. But for the rest of the world, and particularly for the woman sitting in that first-class seat flying back to the state of California, it was only the beginning of a nightmare. What surprised many veteran observers was not the refusal itself. Under the UAE federal decree law on the entry and residence of foreigners, immigration officials are granted wide discretion at the border. Entry is not a right, even for famous names, and decisions do not require public justification. Sovereign states regularly make such calls behind closed doors, especially when reputational, political, or strategic considerations are involved. In that sense, the denial, while unusual for a celebrity, was not legally shocking. What truly caught the attention of the geopolitical intelligence community and royal watchers alike was what reportedly happened next. Rather than turning first to United States Department of State Consular Affairs, which would have been the expected and proper route given her status as a private United States passport holder, Meghan allegedly panicked. In a move that exposed the fragility of her independence, she allegedly sought help through British royal household channels. She tried to pull the strings of the very institution she has spent 6 years dismantling. That single move, critics argue, shifted the entire story from a quiet immigration matter into something far more sensitive and symbolic. It transformed a travel inconvenience into a constitutional incident. To some, the decision raised uncomfortable questions about the Sussexes' true relationship with the crown. Why reach for royal ties after years of carefully distancing herself from royal life? Why involve an institution she had publicly criticized, labeled as racist, and accused of cruelty, especially in a foreign jurisdiction known for valuing clarity and diplomatic protocol above all else? Commentators suggest that this step may have blurred lines that Dubai prefers to keep sharply defined. The UAE distinguishes clearly between private individuals and state-linked institutions, between former roles and present realities. By trying to leverage a royal status she no longer holds to bypass UAE border control, Meghan may have confirmed the very fears that led to her exclusion in the first place. From that perspective, Dubai's silence became its loudest statement. There was no correction, no clarification, no effort to soften the narrative to spare her feelings. The city did not argue its case or defend its choice. It simply moved on. In a place where restraint is often used as a form of supreme sovereign authority, the lack of response spoke volumes. It said, "You are not relevant enough to argue with." Meanwhile, the global reaction was anything but restrained. Speculation spread quickly across social media algorithms and news platforms. Some framed the incident as a personal snub, others as a geopolitical signal sent from the Al Maktoum dynasty to King Charles III. Supporters questioned the fairness of the decision, claiming she was being targeted, while critics pointed to a long trail of public controversies, strained relationships, and brand fatigue. For many watchers of royal and celebrity culture, the episode felt symbolic, a grim reminder that fame does not guarantee access, that influence has limits, and that doors, especially in places like Dubai where memory is long and honor is paramount, do not always open just because someone expects them to. In the end, Dubai never raised its voice because it didn't need to. A calm refusal delivered without explanation was enough to spark a global conversation about the limits of the Sussex power. The city returned to business as usual, while the world debated motives, messages, and missteps. The irony is hard to miss. What was meant to be a low-key arrival became a high-volume discussion about her decline. Dubai's message was subtle, controlled, and final. The world's reaction was a realization that the emperor has no clothes. But the real story isn't just about what happened in the airport. It is about how Buckingham Palace responded to the humiliating moment Meghan Markle witnessed. Did the palace feel humiliated by that moment? Or did they see it as the opportunity they had been waiting for? Let's delve into the moment when the palace finally ended the era of royal ambiguity. Within just 24 hours of the incident, Buckingham Palace broke its silence, and it did so in a way that left little room for speculation or spin. There were no leaks to friendly tabloids, no anonymous briefings to the royal rota, no dramatic flourishes or emotional pleas. Instead, there was a short, carefully worded statement attributed to the Kensington Palace Private Secretary's office, representing William, Prince of Wales. What made this statement powerful was not what it said at length, but what it ended decisively. The tone was calm, restrained, and unmistakably firm. Royal watchers immediately noticed that this was not a message meant to invite dialogue or further interpretation. It was a line drawn neatly, publicly, and with purpose in the sand. In the understated language the palace is famous for, the message carried a very clear meaning. Meghan Markle does not speak for the British monarchy. Not now, not in any situation, and not under any circumstances. According to royal analysts, The statement stripped away every remaining layer of ambiguity that the Sussexes had relied upon. Marriage to a prince, being a mother to royal children, or once holding a duchess title did not translate into official diplomatic authority. None of these factors granted diplomatic weight. None allowed representation, and none implied protection beyond what is normally available to any private citizen. If help was ever needed, the responsibility would rest squarely with standard U.S. Embassy and Consulate General Services. Nothing more, nothing less. This was not just a reminder of protocol. It was a diplomatic disavowal. It was something deeper and far more symbolic. It marked the closing of a door that had been left slightly ajar since the 2020 Sandringham Royal Transition Summit. For years after that departure, a strange gray area existed, a fog of war in which Harry and Meghan operated. Titles were no longer active, yet they were still used on stationery and websites. Royal lexicon was officially retired, yet subtly echoed in their branding. Connections were said to be cut, yet symbolic links lingered in interviews and global appearances. That uncertainty fed public debate and allowed the Sussexes to trade on a connection they had supposedly severed. Was Meghan still royal adjacent? Did her words carry unspoken institutional weight? Could the crown be indirectly pulled into personal, political, or commercial matters through association alone? No one at the palace answered these questions directly until now. With this statement, the ambiguity ended cleanly, publicly, permanently. Behind the scenes, reports suggest that Anne, Princess Royal, played a key role in reinforcing this stance. Known within royal circles for her no-nonsense approach and deep respect for constitutional boundaries, the Princess Royal reportedly ensured that the message was echoed through Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office, FCDO channels. The emphasis was simple but strict. Royal affiliation cannot be used as leverage. It cannot be used for business deals. It cannot be used for media narratives. It cannot be used for political positioning. And it certainly cannot be used to skip the line at Dubai International Airport customs. To outside observers, this moment may look harsh, a grandmother locking the door on her family. But many royal commentators argue the opposite. This was not an act of retaliation or punishment. It was an act of containment. The constitutional monarchy by design survives on clarity. Clear roles, clear rules, clear limits. Anything that blurs those lines risks pulling the institution into controversy it cannot afford. By stating clearly what Meghan is not, the palace protected what the crown must remain: neutral, apolitical, and separate from private enterprise. In doing so, it also protected Prince Harry, Duke of Sussex, royal staff, and even foreign sovereign states from confusion about who speaks with authority and who does not. What makes this moment especially striking is how quietly it was done. No names were attacked, no accusations were made, no past grievances were reopened. The palace did not need to argue its case. It simply stated reality. And in royal nomenclature, brevity often speaks louder than outrage. For years, the story revolved around what might still be possible: reconciliation, representation, residual influence. This statement changed the narrative fundamentally. It was not about the past, and it was not emotional. It was administrative, constitutional, and final. In one short response, the palace did what it does best, when it truly means business. It clarified the rules, closed the file, and moved on, leaving the world to finally do the same. Apart from the humiliation of the denial itself, the question arises, was Meghan Markle affected in other ways? What implication will this have on her brand, which relies so heavily on the perception of global influence? Let's find out the bigger picture. Commentators say the Dubai diplomatic incident was not a one-off mistake or a simple misunderstanding. They describe it as a loud signal in a much bigger story, one that has been quietly building for some time in the boardrooms of global luxury conglomerates and multinational mass media conglomerates. To them, what happened in Dubai was less about a single decision by an immigration officer and more about a growing loss of confidence around Meghan's public image. For a while, Meghan's post-royal identity seemed clear and powerful. It was built around big ideas: empowerment, starting over, speaking truth to power, and standing on strong moral ground. She was no longer just a former royal. She was a symbol of reinvention. Many believe she would reshape celebrity influence, mixing fame with purpose and values. But over the past 2 years, that image has come under steady and sometimes uncomfortable examination. Slowly, the shine began to fade. Media watchers noticed that major partnerships, once announced with excitement and fanfare, began to cool. Some high-profile deals were quietly reduced in scope, while others reportedly ended altogether. Projects that were expected to dominate headlines seemed to stall or disappear without explanation. While this is not unusual in the volatile worlds of entertainment and media, the pattern raised eyebrows. When several doors start closing at once, people begin to ask why. At the same time, charities and nonprofit structures linked to Meghan's name attracted attention for reasons no public figure welcomes. According to public records and press reports, regulators including the United States Internal Revenue Service, IRS, and the UK Charity Commission raised questions about compliance and structure. These were not criminal accusations, but in elite circles, even routine regulatory scrutiny can cause discomfort. For institutions that prize clarity and order, unanswered questions, no matter how small, can feel like red flags. Then came the return of old stories. Former staff complaints, which had once faded from the news cycle, resurfaced with new vigor. Past criticisms that had been dismissed or forgotten came back into public conversation, often louder than before. Social media algorithms amplified every claim, every rumor, and every negative interpretation. Fair or not, the overall effect was a growing sense of instability around the brand. Experts in corporate reputation management often say that perception matters as much as reality. In high-level branding, especially in places that value discretion and predictability like the Middle East and North Africa MENA region, even the appearance of chaos can be damaging. Analysts point out that organizations do not always wait for proof of trouble. Sometimes uncertainty alone is enough to make them step back. Legal questions, financial ambiguity, or an unclear public narrative can quickly turn a once desirable partnership into a perceived gamble. This is the lens through which many observers interpret Dubai's response. They argue that Dubai did not snub a person or pass moral judgment on Meghan Markle, the woman. Instead, it assessed a profile and chose caution. Dubai, as a global hub for business, diplomacy, and controlled luxury, is known for protecting its image fiercely. The city welcomes fame, but only when it comes with reliability and low reputational risk. Celebrity alone is never enough. In this view, Dubai's decision was not emotional or personal. It was strategic. Decision-makers likely asked simple questions. Will this association bring stability or controversy? Will it strengthen our image or complicate it? When answers are unclear, the safest move is often to say no. A Gulf Cooperation Council (GCC) analyst summed it up in blunt but revealing terms. This wasn't about celebrity. It was about stability. That single sentence captures the heart of the issue in regions and industries where order, control, and long-term planning matter deeply. Unpredictability is costly. Even global fame cannot outweigh the fear of reputational risk. For supporters, this interpretation may feel harsh or unfair. For critics, it confirms long-held doubts. But for analysts watching from a distance, the Dubai episode looks less like a sudden rejection and more like a visible crack in a story that has been quietly shifting for years. In their eyes, Dubai did not start the unraveling. It merely exposed it to the harsh light of day. It showed that the emperor has no clothes, and more importantly, no metropolitan police royalty and specialist protection RASP officers to shield them from the gaze of the public. What does this humiliating moment say about Meghan Markle's marital life? Why would she be left unprotected by Buckingham Palace? Let's dive into the details of Meghan's strained marriage, which seems to be buckling under the weight of these external pressures. Two visions, one collision. As pressure from the outside world continued to build, the focus slowly shifted from headlines and public backlash to something far more personal, the marriage between the Duke and Duchess of Sussex itself. What was once presented as an unbreakable partnership standing boldly against royal tradition is now being re-examined through a quieter, more complicated lens. According to insiders quoted by transatlantic media outlets, the growing tension between the couple has little to do with scandal or betrayal in the traditional sense. Instead, it centers on a deeper issue: direction. Those close to the situation describe a marriage strained not by drama, but by different ways of responding to the same reality. Prince Harry, Duke of Sussex, they say, seems tired. He appears emotionally worn down by years of public conflict, constant criticism, and the exhausting need to explain, defend, and reinvent himself. After walking away from royal life in search of peace and control, he now appears less eager to keep fighting the world. To some observers, Harry looks like a man who wants stability, privacy, and a quieter sense of purpose, perhaps even a return to something simpler, if such a thing is still possible for him. Meghan, Duchess of Sussex, on the other hand, is portrayed very differently. Insiders suggest she remains deeply invested in visibility, influence, and global relevance. Where Harry seems ready to slow down, Meghan appears determined to push forward. New platforms, new audiences, and new opportunities are said to remain central to her thinking. In this telling, retreat is not an option. It is momentum that matters. The Emirate of Dubai, according to several reports, was meant to be part of that forward drive, a strategic move into a new space that promised luxury, global attention, and fresh possibilities for financing their lifestyle. What has raised eyebrows, however, is Harry's apparent distance from these efforts. Reports claim he was not closely involved in planning the Dubai trip, a detail that has fueled speculation about how aligned the couple truly is behind the scenes. His lack of public comment afterward only added to the intrigue. To many royal watchers, his silence did not read as quiet support, but as emotional space. Not defiance, just detachment. It paints a picture of a man who is increasingly checking out of the Sussex global brand identity, even as his wife doubles down on it. Behind the scenes, practical pressures are also said to be taking their toll. Financial expectations that once seemed limitless have reportedly tightened. High-profile deals have not always delivered as hoped, and the lifestyle the couple maintains requires constant income and attention. The burn rate of their Montecito real estate portfolio, their private security, and their travel is astronomical. Questions around long-term housing, steady revenue, and future branding have, according to sources, added strain to private conversations. These are not small issues. They are the kinds of stresses that test even the strongest partnerships. What makes this situation especially striking is how far the couple has traveled from where they began. In the early days, after leaving official royal duties, Harry and Meghan presented a powerful image of unity, two people standing shoulder to shoulder against an unfair system, determined to tell their own story on their own terms. That shared sense of mission seemed to bind them tightly together against the world. But as time has passed and influence has proven harder to maintain, cracks, subtle but significant, appear to be forming. Analysts now suggest that the real divide is not about love, but about response. Both Harry and Meghan experienced the same fall from royal power, the same loss of status, and the same intense public scrutiny. Yet, they appear to be processing it in very different ways. Harry's response seems inward-looking, cautious, and tired. He is looking back at what he lost. Meghan's appears outward-facing, ambitious, and still hungry for impact. She is looking at what she can still gain. This contrast has led many to wonder whether the couple is still moving toward the same destination or simply walking side by side in different directions. What once looked like a single unified front against the world now seems, at least to outside observers, like two individuals navigating the same storm with very different instincts. And as the pressure continues to mount, the question lingering in the background is no longer just about public image or career moves, but about whether shared purpose can survive when visions begin to drift apart. The lesson of the Dubai inadmissibility ruling is a difficult one about power in the modern world, one that many people, including perhaps the Sussexes, misunderstand. Influence today is not just about fame, titles, or past associations. It is about permission. Symbolic power only survives for as long as powerful institutions choose to recognize it. Once that recognition is withdrawn, the symbol begins to fade. Critics argue that Meghan Markle may have misread this reality. There appeared to be an assumption that royal identity was permanent, something that could be stepped away from temporarily, then picked up again later, reshaped to suit new goals. In this view, the crown was not a structure with rules, limits, and expectations, but a brand asset that could be reused at will. The idea seemed to be once royal, always royal. But the events that followed told a very different story. Dubai's quiet but firm refusal to engage was not just a social snub. It was a calculated decision made by a city that thrives on certainty, control, and carefully managed reputation. Dubai does not gamble with ambiguity. It aligns itself with figures who bring clarity, stability, and predictable value. When access was denied, the signal was subtle but powerful. This was not about personal dislike, it was about risk. Then came Buckingham Palace's public distancing, which removed any remaining doubt. This was not a coincidence, it was alignment. The monarchy and the marketplace, two very different systems, delivered the same message at the same time. Titles alone are not passports. History does not guarantee relevance, and former status does not entitle anyone to future platforms. Together, these moments shattered the belief that royal association could exist independently of royal duty. The palace made it clear that the distance was intentional. Dubai made it clear that neutrality was no longer possible. What remained was a gap, one where influence once stood. In the worlds of global diplomatic relations, elite business, and luxury branding, trust is everything. But more than trust, there must be predictability. People often assume scandal is the greatest threat to reputation. In reality, uncertainty is far more dangerous. Institutions can manage controversy. They can spin mistakes. They can even survive public criticism. What they cannot afford is unpredictability, especially when billions of dollars, geopolitical alliances, and long-term planning are involved. By early 2026, this had become the core issue. Meghan Markle was no longer viewed simply as controversial. She was viewed as inconsistent. Her image had shifted from polished prestige to strategic uncertainty. And in high-level spaces, uncertainty closes doors faster than any headline ever could. Luxury brands rely on control. Governments rely on stability. Royal families rely on continuity. When a public figure appears difficult to place neither fully inside nor fully outside an institution, it creates confusion. And confusion is bad for business, diplomacy, and tradition alike. This is why the response was not dramatic, loud, or emotional. It was calm, quiet, and final. No angry statements, no public arguments, just a steady withdrawal of access. Invitations stopped coming. Associations cooled. The silence did the work. The larger lesson is not about one individual. It is about how modern power actually works. Influence is not something you own. It is something you are granted, renewed, and sometimes revoked. Titles do not function like personal property. They function like contracts. And when the terms change, so does the value. One strategic communications consultant summed up the moment with blunt honesty, cutting through years of speculation and noise. She thought leaving the palace would make the world chase her. Instead, the world watched and recalculated. That recalculation is the part many overlook. The world did not react emotionally, it reacted strategically. It assessed risk, measured benefit, and made decisions accordingly. And in doing so, it exposed a truth that is easy to ignore but impossible to escape. Influence without institutional backing is fragile, and prestige without predictability rarely survives. Finally, we must look at the geopolitical context that made this snub inevitable. What kind of ties existed between the United Arab Emirates and the United Kingdom? Did the embarrassing moment affect the relationship of these nations? Could Dubai really have acted based on the approval of Buckingham Palace? Let's take a look at the friendship shared by these nations that goes beyond politics. How royal ties bind the UK and UAE. The relationship between the royal families of the United Kingdom and the United Arab Emirates is not just warm, it is deeply rooted, personal, and remarkably enduring. According to respected Peter Hellyer, UAE historian and author, this bond goes far beyond the usual ties seen between two friendly nations. Instead of being limited to official meetings, treaties, or changing political interests, the connection has grown into a rare kind of family-to-family relationship shaped by trust, respect, and shared history. Speaking some years ago after the passing of Queen Elizabeth II, Hellyer reflected on how special this relationship truly is. Having closely watched the growth of UAE-UK relations for more than 4 decades, he expressed strong confidence that the friendship between the two countries would not only survive the Queen's death, but continue to flourish under King Charles III. His confidence, he explained, is rooted in something far deeper than diplomacy. One of the strongest pillars of this relationship, Hellyer noted, is the close bond between the British royal family and the UAE's ruling families, particularly those of the Emirate of Abu Dhabi and Emirate of Dubai. This connection, he emphasized, was carefully built over time and nurtured through personal interactions rather than political negotiations. It is a relationship that has stood firm above shifting political landscapes and changing global priorities. At the heart of this enduring bond were two towering figures, Queen Elizabeth II and the UAE's founding father, Sheikh Zayed bin Sultan Al Nahyan. Together, they laid the groundwork for a friendship that would shape relations between their nations for generations. Queen Elizabeth II played a key role in strengthening ties with the UAE's ruling families, engaging with them not merely as political leaders, but as partners and friends. Through this approach, the relationship grew into something far more meaningful than a standard government-to-government alliance. Hellyer explained that this unique bond is different because it operates on a personal level. Governments may change, policies may shift, and political tensions may arise, but the family connection has remained steady. This personal trust has helped both nations weather challenges and maintain mutual respect even during uncertain times. Queen Elizabeth II's visits to the UAE were especially significant in building this foundation. Known as the most widely traveled monarch in history, she made 2 historic visits to the Emirates. First during the 1979 state visit and 2010 state visit. These visits were not symbolic gestures. They were powerful moments that reinforced friendship, understanding, and mutual appreciation. Her presence in the UAE sent a clear message about the importance Britain placed on its relationship with the young nation and its leadership. Through these exchanges, bonds were strengthened, traditions were shared, and a deep sense of mutual respect was reinforced. What makes this relationship especially intriguing is its resilience. While many international partnerships depend heavily on political alignment or economic interests, the UAE royal connection has thrived on personal rapport and shared values. This has allowed it to rise above disagreements and remain strong through periods of global change. As leadership transitions from one generation to the next, the legacy left by Queen Elizabeth II and Sheikh Zayed continues to shape the future. King Charles III inherits not just a throne, but a carefully nurtured relationship built on decades of goodwill. For observers, this history offers reassurance that the bond between the UAE and the UK is not only secure, but poised to grow even stronger. In a world where alliances often feel temporary, the friendship between these royal families stands out as something rare, deeply human, firmly rooted, and quietly powerful. Against this backdrop, Meghan Markle's attempt to use her former royal status to gain entry into Dubai was not just a personal misstep, it was a diplomatic blunder of the highest order. She failed to understand that in the UAE, the relationship is with the crown, not the celebrity. By positioning herself in opposition to the British monarchy, she placed herself in opposition to the UAE's oldest and most trusted allies. Dubai did not need a phone call from Buckingham Palace to know what to do. The protocol was already written in 50 years of shared history. The door was closed not because they hated her, but because they valued the king. And in the Game of Thrones, loyalty always trumps celebrity. The rejection was a testament to the enduring power of these quiet, behind-the-scenes alliances that operate far beyond the noise of the daily news cycle. Furthermore, the rejection by the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, which followed swiftly on the heels of the Dubai incident, underscored the regional consensus. The Gulf Cooperation Council, GCC member states, operate in concert on matters of high-level protocol. A snub in one capital is often echoed in others. Meghan's team, perhaps hoping that Saudi Arabia's ambitions in the entertainment sector would make them more amenable, failed to account for the deep respect for monarchy that pervades the region. The Saudis, too, saw a figure who had disrespected her own royal family, and they had no desire to import that kind of energy. The reputational risk cited by insiders was a polite way of saying that she was bad for business and bad for stability. The financial implications of this double rejection are severe. The Gulf region has become a critical source of funding for global ventures, from venture capital tech startups to media empires. By being frozen out of this market, Meghan has lost access to one of the few remaining pools of capital that could have sustained her ambitious lifestyle and business plans. With the American entertainment industry cooling and the Middle East closing its doors, the options are narrowing. The Montecito financial liquidity crisis is not just a rumor. It is a mathematical certainty if new revenue streams are not found. And as Harry retreats into his own thoughts, questioning the path he has taken, the isolation becomes absolute. The world is a large place, but for the Duchess of Sussex, it is feeling smaller by the day.